information on prevention, tools for a healthy lifestyle. Make little changes to be the best you. It's all here. A podcast empowering, informing, and motivating Bermuda to live well. Bermuda Health-Abets. Everything from A to Z on healthy living. Brought to you by the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health in collaboration with local health partners.
Hi, I'm your host today. My name is Dr. Verloy Lewin, and I am the Health Promotion and Wellness Coordinator for the Department of Health. I've been in this role for about 15 years and just enjoy the ability to meet and work with a variety of professionals who want to improve the lives of the Bermuda community. Today, our guest is Jeelise Allen, Thanatologist of Tuwile Grief Support Services and Mayvera Wellness. Jeelise is going to share with us on the topic of compassionate conversations providing grief support. Welcome, Jeelise.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello.
Yes, I'm glad you're here. And I just want, before we get into our conversation, if you could just share a little bit about your background and tell us what a thanatologist is. Because when I saw that word, I was like, what is that? I've never heard that before.
So thanatology is the scientific study of death, dying, grief, and bereavement. So I graduated 10 years ago with my degree in thanatology. I came home. I worked for Friends of Hospice for about 4 years, and then I went back to do my master's in psychology. COVID happened, as we all know, and then I had to do some shuffling. I came home, I went back to the UK, got some more work experience in community mental health, and then I did a counseling certificate. I've been home for 2 years now, and I was working in women's addiction treatment, and now I am focusing solely on counseling and grief support.
Grief support. And that's very needed here in Bermuda. Tell me a little bit about thanatology. Is that something that's pretty new, or is it something that's been around a while?
So the discipline has probably been around for at least 60 years now. It's kind of a new field to the world of like psychology and science and things like that. But it's looking at everything from how we deal with grief, why we grieve, to different types of burials. So I can be cremated but become a diamond or a reef, to green burials or alternative burials, other than, being buried in a crematory or
coffin?
In a coffin.
Yeah.
Yes. So looking also at how do we prepare for death, right? So what do we need to do at the end of life and the stages of dying, because there are no stages to grieving. And so looking at all of that, how does religion, how does society shape our beliefs towards dying, death? What are we going to do with our legacy when we die, right? What about our belongings? How do we prepare for that? So why don't we, mourn for the people that we see in a movie that die, right? So all of those types of questions came up during my studies, and that's what I'm really passionate about. But my focus right now is really about adult grief support. And so being able to help people journey through that process of grief for individuals and groups.
Okay. So since you were talking about grief support, how do you define grief, and why do you think it impacts people in such varied ways?
Grief is the emotional, spiritual, physical, social, and psychological reaction to an important loss. And that loss is either real or perceived, and it's based on what you feel is important to you. So I can't say that this person is going to impact me a certain way, or the loss of my dog is not going to impact me a certain way. It's whatever you feel is valued to yourself, and if you feel that it's a real loss for you, there will be a grieving process to it. Grief doesn't always come with just the death of a person, right? We grieve when we lose relationship with anyone. So that could be a relationship with my best friend. I no longer speak to her because of whatever we fell out. That's a loss. Breakup that happens between couples, a divorce. Loss of job, absolutely. When we have to shift careers, becoming a retiree is a huge transition in life that
Yes.
comes with loss that a lot of people don't talk
You don't,
about.
you don't think
Don't
about
think
that
about
as
that,
people are
right?
celebrating usually,
Yes,
but
but
that
it's
is
a big
yeah,
piece, right?
yeah.
And when we think about essential service workers who are like the policemen and the firefighters, they often have a very their life, the quality of their life really goes downhill when they lose that work. And so they end up getting severely sick or they die very
Wow.
prematurely.
Because of the structure of it?
Yeah,
Or?
because of the huge part of their identity is
Right.
wrapped up in
Yes.
that
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
And so when they are no longer, they have to figure out, well, what else am I going to do?
Right.
And it takes a toll on you. It's a loss, right?
So should there be like some preparation, especially when you've been in a role for many years and you're going to go into retirement? Because you see a lot of people, they go into retirement and then all of a sudden they sick and then they
die.
pass.
Yeah.
And should it be like maybe some transition period of like, what is my next?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so. I think
To
people
keep them
should ask those
occupied. Yeah,
questions. You
yeah.
know, what's next for me? Is it I pour all into my family? Do I do community service work? Do
Start
I
a business.
start a
Another
business?
business,
Yes,
yeah,
or
yeah.
travel. Like figure it out. What's the next step so that you're not like, oh, okay, now I
Yeah.
don't get up. No, I don't have anything to do.
yeah,
It's a huge
yeah.
transition.
Didn't
And-
think about that.
Yeah.
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 So how does grief change over time, or is there ever a conclusion or closure to it? Do we
So
get over it?
That's a huge misconception that I find with people. They think that there's like these steps that I have to kind of do and I'll get through this. Grief has no closure. There is no closure. It's a journey. It's a process that we kind of have to go through. We can't like go around it. We can't push it down. You really need to feel all of the feelings that come with grief. Grief is an ebb and flow. It's like the ocean, right? So we have these big moments that kind of feel like they're going to take us out. And then you have little moments that you kind of can get through and you work through. So it changes over time. And, time, people say that the cliche, time heals all wounds.
Yeah.
It doesn't heal it, but it definitely helps you to learn how to navigate, right? Because in the beginning, so you have like the primary laws, whatever that is that you find valuable. So if we think about a person who has died, our grandmother, for instance, then we have the secondary losses. And a lot of those losses are the things that look like the connection that we have to our family. Because if she was the matriarch of the family, those relationships may be now compromised because she isn't the glue there to keep everybody together, right? A loss of the homestead might happen because we don't know where deeds are. We haven't had the difficult conversations about how we do things or how we do that. If it's a father who, was the breadwinner in the family and he held all the accounts and, I don't know where to pay a bill or that a bill even needs to be paid or what's the accounts for this. There's a lot of business that comes with grief as well that a lot of people don't think about that lasts months after the person has died. And so with all of those losses, we need time to be able to figure out what the secondary losses are going to be. So I can't say that you're going to know that within the first month. It's probably maybe even 2 years down the line that you go, oh, I really would have liked so-and-so to be here. And then you kind of go through these motions all over again. When we think about children and their developmental stages, right? At each point, they're going to have different questions that are going to come up if there's a parent that died. And so it's a lifelong process. It's one of those things that we pay for loving people, right? Having connections with people. That's who we are as human beings. And grief is just it's one of those things that we kind of do.
When you were talking about the secondary losses, so it's important for us to have those conversations with our loved ones about, where things are, those type of things, deeds, accounts, all of those things. I know it's a hard conversation because sometimes you don't want to talk about those things as if, if you talk about it, somebody's going to die or something like that. But, it's important to... So it makes the process a bit easier for you if you know where things are, what you need to do, just that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I always say we talk about sex, but we don't get pregnant. So we can talk about death and we're not going to die,
That's true,
right?
That's true.
And it's really that last gift that we kind of give to ourselves and our family when we do prepare. We have those difficult conversations. You can go to Final Steps Bermuda, and they have a website that's geared around having those difficult conversations. You can look up the conversation starter pack where it's going to give you those little questions to kind of start that conversation. And, it doesn't need to always be this heavy thing where you sit down and you're like, oh, I need to, get it all out. No, it could be we're creating a memory, or we're cooking around the dinner table. Christmas is coming. When you're making a cassava pie, let's just ask, what would you like? What would you want to happen? When things do happen in the world, let that be a conversation starter too. Hey, I absolutely wouldn't want that at my funeral. And then let that be what kind of sparks the conversation. Drive's always a good way to have conversations as well. But it's important that we prepare, because it's the only guarantee we have in this life, right? We're going to all die. But I may never get married, may never have children, may never get the job I aspire to have, but I'm definitely going to die. So let's prepare.
So why do you think people have the hesitancy about talking about death and with their loved ones and discussing a plan, or getting those last things in?
Because people have the notion that if I talk about it, I'm going to manifest that into my life. No, we're all going to die. It's going to happen regardless, right? It's also difficult to kind of imagine your loved one not being here. And so some people don't want to have that conversation at all, because I don't want to imagine you not here. Like, don't talk about that, right? We live in a death-denying society. We kind of are very productive, capitalist type of society where we're always got to be doing something. So when we even think to stop to rest, some people feel guilty that they can't do that. So being able to stop and think about my final day, like, no, I'm got to keep going. I'm going to live my life. But I realized that, looking at your mortality and including that into your life actually allows you to live a more fully authentic lifestyle. So, in my studies, I had to sit down and think about my funeral and what that would look like. When I have a child, and I wrote out my will, because people die in childbirth. That's a real possibility. And I've thought about it, and I update it every year because things change, right? And it's important to know that it doesn't have to be set in stone. Like, what I write today may not be what I'm going to write when I'm 45 or 50, 60 years old. It changes. You evolve, and so your plans will evolve as well. But someone needs to know what you desire.
Yeah. So how can someone navigate their grief and also managing daily life and their responsibilities? Of course, a person dies, but you still have to live and go on with your daily activities. How can they navigate that?
So it's important to carve out space for your grief. Definitely you want to feel all of your feelings. That's my top priority. If you come in my space, I'm going to tell you feel what you want to feel, right? There's no right or wrong way to feel. So if you're angry about it, be angry about it. Like, there's no right or wrong, right? If you are still missing the person, you don't understand why this happened, in shock and disbelief, that's all okay. But life has to go on as well. And so what you can do is make time for your grief. So yes, I have a busy schedule. I have young children to still attend to, but I can carve out 30 minutes or an hour of every day where I can just sit and feel my feelings. I don't have to put on a brave face for everybody else or go to work and make sure I complete all my deadlines. I can save it for this time that I can feel all of my feelings. Know that there is help, there's support, right? Some people are more, they want to be more personal, and so they'll come for individual therapy versus someone who wants that more community-minded space, and so they'll go to a grief group support. You also have online communities where you can find resources as well. And communities that pertain to the specific loss that you're dealing with, right? So a child, losing a child is a lot different from someone who has lost a spouse, right? And so you might find more community with the similarities in the grief support groups that you find.
So are there many grief support groups locally in Bermuda?
So we have a few, not as many. We probably could have more. But I facilitate the grief support group at the Women's Resource Center. So it's been over a year now, and we meet on the last Wednesday of every month from 6 o'clock. You just have to show up and come and...
you don't need to
register anything. Just show up 6 o'clock last Wednesday of every month. So That's one support group. It is women only. There is other groups by Grief Share. Muriel Williams, she is with the Midland Heights community, Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah.
And so she does it. That's an online version of a group support group. And it's kind of structured. It's a 12-week, I believe, group. And so that's an option. We do have Jeelise Productions. I don't know what groups they have, but they have the Hearts program going on there. So there are groups on island that you can work with. But yeah.
But also they can contact you as well.
Yes, they can contact me to find more details as well. And then online is a great resource that you can tap into as well.
All right, so great. So how can someone maintain a connection to the person they've lost while moving forward with their own life? How do can do that?
Right. So most people often think that when their person dies that the relationship is over just because they aren't here in the physical sense anymore. But that doesn't happen, right? The love doesn't disappear just because your person is no longer here physically. And it depends, I guess, on your belief system too. If you think about an afterlife or a world where you may connect with this person again at some point, it kind of changes that for you. But we all can, there's a term called continuing bonds. And so what you're doing is trying to figure out, how do I keep that connection with my loved one. So some people might do these big external things where they'll, create monuments in that person's legacy, or they'll donate a park bench. They'll create a fundraiser. So you have the golf, tournaments, or you have, I'm running a 5K for them. But it could also be very simple and individual, where it's, I light a candle for them and remember them at every occasion, or you still bake their favorite foods during the holidays, or set a place for them at the table. Or just include them. I wear their favorite sweater during these things. Or just keep their memory alive, whatever it is.
Birthdays,
talk about them. Share memories about them. It may be that their illness or whatever they died from, the circumstances, becomes now something that you take more seriously in your own life. So they had a health challenge, you now take your health seriously. Or it may just mean that you are more present in the lives of the people that you care about, so that they know that you love them. Because a lot of people struggle with their grief because they have unfinished business with their loved one. And so there's things that were left unsaid, or things that didn't resolve between that person. And so now going forward, you kind of make sure that you don't let such trivial things linger on, or you're able to really speak up about how you feel and change the relationships that you have with people.
As you said before, we're not guaranteed tomorrow.
Yes.
So we should live in the present of today and make sure that we, our friends, our loved ones, that we tell them that we love them, and that we try to resolve any issues that we have.
Absolutely.
It's something just came to mind when you were talking. A lot of people who have lost loved ones, they may start a foundation or those type of things. So it gives them a sense of purpose, and honors the legacy of that individual. So that's a wonderful way to do that. So what can friends and family members do to best support someone who's grieving, especially if they fully don't understand their experience? Like, a lot of times we feel like, okay, well, we're praying for you, we're, that sort of thing. But it sounds so trite sometimes. How can we, meaningfully tell our loved ones, So it's important that you listen to your loved one, right? Ask the questions about what it is that they actually need in this time, not imposing on what we feel like you should be doing, or you should be grieving and it should look this way. Like, really just have a frank conversation with your loved one about what's going on, how are you doing, what do you need, be present. So I'm here to just sit with you in that uncomfortableness, right? Because a lot of times we often want to cheer the person up, and you can't do that, right? In grief, you can't bring the person back, which is really what they want. We can't do that. We should avoid the euphemisms, right? So, use the language that we have. The person has died, they are not here anymore, instead of saying, oh, we've lost them, or they've passed away. No, they know exactly where the person is. They're in somebody's cemetery, or they're in an urn in their room, or wherever the case may be.
use the language, because it gives meaning to the experience that the person is facing, right? We want to kind of avoid the toxic positivity. So it is really about being able to sit in that uncomfortableness with them, and just be there. You don't have to really do a lot, because there's nothing you can really say, but you just have to be present and be that friend that actively does. So instead of me saying, call me if you need me, or yeah, I'll take you out to dinner, I'm going to show up. I'm going to go to that person's house, wait for them to get ready. They may protest and be, I don't feel like it, I don't want to. But we're going. We're going out. Okay. We're going to go, right? I'm going to pick you up and take you to the grocery store. They may never call you. Right. And people don't. They often feel like, I don't want to burden other people. They don't understand what I'm experiencing, so you're not going to know, right? And so it's really just do. So go take them to the grocery store if you don't know what they would normally purchase at the grocery store, but that helps, know? Right. Understand that people may not always answer either. So you may just send a message and they may not get back to you because they're just overwhelmed, right? It's a lot going on. Right. So be that person that still checks in. Yes. Don't feel slighted that, oh, well, she never messaged me back. So you kind of cut off the relationship. No, they're just going through a lot. The world has completely changed and they're trying to figure it out, right? So listen, be present, ask questions, say, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you, right? Yeah. When there's big events come up where you would think, hey, I wonder how they're doing. It may be the death anniversary. It's okay to just send a little message, hey, thinking about you. Right. I'm here for you. I'll call you later tonight, right? Or and make sure you do it, right? Don't let it be an empty gesture. Actually mean it, you know? Right. So, Right.
So now, we're coming up to holidays, and what's the best way to support a person or a family during the holidays or special occasions, because that has a lot to it, especially if that person was an integral part of your celebrations and stuff like that. So.
Right. So again, because everyone's process is a very unique one, it's always good to ask the question, right? Sometimes we also need to give our persons permission not to show up in the same way for the holidays because they may not know what they need, right? So it's okay if you don't want to come out, or you don't want to stay for the whole time like you used to do, or you don't feel like baking and because you always bring the pound cake. Right. You don't have to, give them permission to say, I don't want to do it this year, right? Or if they do want to get out, invite them, right? It's okay to bring up that person, because that's what a lot of people say who are grieving, that nobody asks us about my loved one anymore. Nobody talks to me about them. It's okay to bring up that person. But you also have to read the room. So if you've noticed that the person is uncomfortable with the conversation, back off, right? But don't not include them because you feel uncomfortable or you think it's going to make them uncomfortable. Include them, but also let them know that it's okay if they don't come either, right? Because they're trying to figure it out. They don't know what...
let them take the lead a bit.
Let them take the lead, but it's also... broaching the subject, right? So it's acknowledging that this is a difficult time for them, and it's okay either way. If they want to come, don't want to come, but you're here, right? Give them permission to figure it out.
So can you recommend any resources that people can use who are looking for grief support?
Yeah, so you can find me. So my business will be launching in the new year, but it's called 2LA Grief Support Services. You can also find me currently with Mayvera Wellness or at the Women's Resource Center. You have Big Girl Panties podcast, and so she has a great guided grief journal that you can purchase. It's geared toward the ladies, but it's a great journal that you can kind of work through your emotions and feelings. A lot of prompting that goes on in the journal that are going to ask different questions that you can kind of really process your grief. We have Grief Share by Muriel Williams, who I talked about. That's the online grief support group. podcasts such as Grief Out Loud and The Grief Gang, books by Mary Frances O'Connell. It's The Grieving Brain, because there's actually things that are going on with inside our brains when we are grieving. Right. So that kind of explains a lot of what we're going through, and I think it's a great book to kind of pick up. Right. And we're looking at children and families. The Doggy Center, I just did a webinar with them yesterday, because yesterday was National Grief Day, Grieving Children Day. And so that's a great resource, the Doggy Center. You have David Kassler. He's a real big name in the deaf world. And then you have Refuge in Grief, which you can find on Facebook.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the name of your business. I thought that was very interesting, what it means.
So Tuile is it's a Kenyan word, actually, and it means death is inevitable. So I'm very culturally inclined in my practice, so bringing that into the room. And so Tuile, it registered to me, as I am of African descent, and I just really thought that was fitting for the work that I'm doing. And so, I'm excited about what's to come.
Well, thank you. Today we've had a great conversation with our guest, Jeelise Allen, a thanatologist. If you've never heard that before, you've heard it here today. And we're so grateful that you've come and given us some information. Are there any last words that you would like to share with our audience?
Just know that this is a journey, right? There's no closure in grief, and that sometimes you do need support. Healthy grieving there is a healthy way and an unhealthy way, even though it's a very unique process, and that's based on your relationships, the importance that the Lord's had to you. All of those things kind of factor into how we're going to grieve, but know that there is support out here and that you don't have to do this by yourself. So even if you just want to have a question, I do provide a free 15-minute consultation, which you can find me at mayvera.com, and you can book a time slot. If you just want to, am I going crazy or not? To kind of figure out what I'm experiencing. Is it actually a common response, or do I need some support? So if you have questions, find me, reach out to me. I'm here to help you. You don't have to do this alone, but know that it is a journey. So what you're experiencing today might change again in 10 years, 20 years, 15 years time. It doesn't end.
Yeah, that triggered a thought, what you just said, because there was a question I think we had about if I'm grieving, when do I know that it's kind of the normal process, or if I'm going to need some extra help,
support? Yeah. So if it's 10 to 20% of grievers will develop prolonged grief disorder. And so that's a real preoccupation with the deceased, right? There's a yearning for them. You're not really functioning doing the day-to-day tasks of getting up out of bed, making sure to get to work, eat properly, shower, things like that. If you're really struggling 3 months, 6 months, a year into this process, then that's a cause for concern. Absolutely. If you are isolating from people because you're afraid to make connections in because you're afraid that you're going to lose someone, that's an issue. If you are doing risky behaviors, so I'm using drugs and alcohol to cope. If I am being hypersexual, so I'm just risking my partners and not worrying about my sexual health, that's an issue. That's a concern that would mean I need some help here. It's not healthy if you are having to hide what you're dealing with. That means reach out for support. If you have suicidal thoughts, I'd rather not be here, or I'd like to be with my loved one rather than trying to get through each day, then that's definitely
the time to, Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for our listening audience for tuning in. We invite you to leave some feedback or any comments on our Department of Health Bermuda YouTube page or our Facebook page. And to our listening audience, keep an eye on this spot for the next episode of Bermuda Health-Abets. And follow us on Facebook at Department of Health Bermuda and YouTube Department of Health Bermuda. Thank you again, Jeelise.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Bermuda Health-Abets. Please note, anything you heard on this podcast is not a substitute for visiting your healthcare provider. If you have a topic or want a question answered, please contact the Health Promotion and Wellness Office of the Department of Health by emailing healthpromotion@gov.bm or by calling 278-4900. Be sure to listen out for the next episode of Bermuda Health-Abets.